Get out of here now." The shout of a presidential guard echoed through the White House hallway, terrifying and harsh. It was not a joke. His eyes widened, glaring at the child on the verge of bursting into tears. Stephen Parker could never have imagined that this boy's identity would change his life forever. The afternoon sun streamed through the large glass windows of the White House, reflecting off the long red carpets that lined the grand hallway. A boy about 4 or 5 years old, with messy blonde hair and a mischievous face, was running around excitedly. He was innocently exploring every corner of the most powerful building in the United States, completely unaware that he had drawn attention. "Hey!" A furious voice rang out. Presidential Guard Stephen Parker, a middle-aged man in a well-tailored suit, strode toward the boy, his sharp eyes filled with cold authority. He was a former soldier, known for his strict discipline and absolute intolerance for chaos. Parker had always maintained his rigid rules. People saw him as he appeared fierce, ruthless, and cold. No one in the White House had ever seen him treat a child gently. "What the hell are you doing here? Who gave you permission to run around like this?" Parker growled, his voice filled with irritation. The boy froze, his blue eyes wide with fear. He acted as if he didn't hear Parker, which only infuriated the man further. He hated children, they were nothing but trouble to him. He stepped closer, towering over the small child. But before the boy could utter a word, Parker seized his arm, gripping it so tightly that the child winced in pain. "Get out now. This is not your playground. If I catch you running around again, don't blame me for being rough." He snapped, his eyes flashing with both annoyance and disdain. He yanked the boy's arm and shoved him toward the entrance. A senior White House official, John Spencer, rushed over upon seeing the tense situation. Panting, he hurriedly stepped between Parker and the child, his face filled with concern. "Stephen, what the hell are you doing? Don't be so harsh. This boy could be the child of an important guest." Parker glared at John, his expression darkening, his voice cutting like steel. "I don't care whose child he is. This is the White House, not an amusement park. Anyone, child or adult, who has no business here is not allowed to run around unchecked. I am doing my job. If you don't want to be dragged into trouble, you'd better stay out of this." John shook his head, unable to hide his frustration. "Your job is to ensure security, not to treat a child like a criminal. Look at him, does he seem dangerous to you?" Parker tightened his grip on the boy's arm, making the child grimace in pain. "I don't care whether he's dangerous or not. I care about maintaining order. If I allow an unfamiliar child to run around here, what's next? A stranger? A terrorist? I can't accept any risks." John took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Do you really think a 5-year-old boy is a threat? Do you realize you're overreacting?" Parker scoffed. "Overreacting? I am following protocol. This child has no reason to be here, so he must leave. If you have a problem with that, take it up with my superiors. I don't care." John took a step forward, his gaze sharp as a blade. "I will certainly do that. But I warn you, Parker, if you continue acting like an emotionless brute, one day you will regret it." Parker let out a mocking laugh. "Regret it? I'm just doing my job. I don't need anyone preaching to me here. If you have something to say, take it up with the higher-ups. As for now, I'm taking this kid out of here." The loud argument between the two men terrified the boy to the core. He began sobbing uncontrollably. His cries only worsened Parker's mood. He tightened his grip, causing the boy's small hand to redden. "So annoying. If you don't shut up, I'll lock you in a dark room." The crying only grew louder. It was unbearable for a 5-year-old child to face Parker's ferocity. He sobbed in distress, but his suffering did nothing to soften Parker's heart. On the contrary, it only made him more irritable. "What a terrible brat. Shut up now," Parker snapped, raising his hand, ready to deliver a harsh slap to the child. "What the hell are you doing?" A familiar voice almost shouted from the end of the hallway. Parker froze and turned around. His face immediately turned pale. From the far end of the corridor, Trump stormed toward him. Beside him was a face known to everyone, Elon Musk, the world-famous billionaire. Surrounding them was a crowd of journalists who had come to cover today's meeting. Parker, flustered, was about to explain the situation when the most unexpected thing happened. The boy broke free from his grasp and ran toward Trump. He clung tightly to Elon Musk's leg and called out, "Dad." At that moment, time seemed to stand still. The cameras of the press clicked non-stop. The continuous flashing lights illuminated Parker's face, and cold sweat started trickling down his forehead. He knew something truly catastrophic had just happened, and now he would have to face Trump's wrath. Trump furrowed his brows, his gaze turning razor-sharp as he looked at Parker. "What the hell are you doing to my honored guest?" Parker's face turned ghostly white as the weight of his grave mistake dawned on him. I didn't know, Mr. President. I just thought." "Mr. Stephen Parker," Trump stared straight into Parker's eyes. Surely the secretary sent the guest list for today's White House visit to the security team. "And it seems you didn't read it, did you?" Trump enunciated each word slowly, deliberately. The question sliced through Parker's mind, leaving only sheer terror in its wake. Because Trump was right. He had ignored the secretary's notification. He had assumed the visitors were either politicians, businessmen, or journalists. In other words, all adults. He had never imagined a child would be on the list. Parker stood there stunned, knowing that no words he could utter would be correct now. I was just trying to maintain order here, sir." Parker desperately tried to salvage the situation. "Sir, I made an oversight when checking the guest list. I didn't know this was your son." As he spoke, he cast a guilty glance at Elon Musk. "The issue isn't whose child he is. The issue is how you behaved. A presidential security officer, yet you acted like a common street thug. I feel deeply ashamed to have an employee like you." Trump spoke in a voice laced with both disappointment and anger. "Mr. President, I just thought I was doing my duty. The boy was too stubborn, and I lost my temper a little. But..." Trump didn't let him finish his sentence. "There's nothing to think about. You're fired." Trump interrupted, his voice sharp and indisputable. Parker stiffened, quickly bowing his head. "Mr. President, I'm sorry. Please give me a chance. I didn't mean to. It's not right for you to fire me. I have worked here under so many presidents before you." Trump raised his hand to stop him. "Rules are rules. I don't need people who act recklessly without thinking. Get out of here immediately." Trump's voice rose a notch, making the entire White House hold its breath. A few other security guards stepped forward and grabbed Parker's arms, escorting him out. He was in shock, but his mouth kept pleading for the president to reconsider. But it was too late. Parker was expelled from the most powerful place in America. And yet, for him, this was only the beginning. Being fired from the White House, Parker now faced a harsh reality. He had grown used to standing in the security ranks of important figures. But now, no one needed him anymore. Everywhere he applied for a job, people looked at his record with hesitation. Because after that day, headlines with titles like "Trump's bodyguard was rude to a child" spread like wildfire across the internet. Everyone knew Parker's story. And because of that, despite his extensive experience, being fired from the White House became a stain, making many employers wary. Job interviews kept failing, and each time he left another rejection, Parker felt more and more hopeless. His savings dwindled, bills piled up, and he started cutting down on every expense. He wandered around the city, searching for even the smallest opportunity. With each passing day, hope seemed to fade further. One day, when he was nearly out of hope, he happened to see a job posting at a children's shelter on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. The job wasn't prestigious, the salary was insignificant, but it was the only chance he had. Reluctantly, he applied. After a brief interview, the shelter hired him as a security guard. The feeling of putting on a new uniform felt nothing short of humiliating for Parker. He had once worked at the White House, protecting the most powerful people in the world, yet now, he was just a guard watching over children, beings he had always harbored an aversion toward. He bitterly accepted it because he knew he had no other choice. On his first day of work, he stepped through the center's gate with a heavy heart, completely unaware that his life was about to change forever. Working at the children's shelter was a tremendous challenge for Parker. He didn't like children and wasn't used to their noise and mischief. Every day at work, he felt exhausted dealing with their endless screams and laughter. The kids ran around everywhere, showing no fear or respect for discipline, which irritated Parker even more. He simply did his job maintaining security, keeping order, but always tried to keep his distance from the children. In the beginning, he felt uncomfortable every time a child ran up to him or accidentally bumped into him. Parker had no patience for their naive stories, nor did he care about their tears or bursts of laughter. But then, one day, a single question changed everything. "You don't like us, do you?" The clear voice of Nick, an 8-year-old boy, made Parker turn his head. "Stop saying nonsense and go play, kid," he responded coldly. "No one likes us. I know that. Even our parents didn't like us, that's why they abandoned us. Isn't that right?" An innocent question, yet painfully heartbreaking. It struck a chord with Parker. He was cold and indifferent. He had no children, no family. And for the first time he felt a flicker of understanding for the pain buried within this small boy. "No, that's not true, kid. I can see the way you look at us. It's the same look my mother gave me before she left me here. She hasn't returned in 3 years. My friends say she hates me." Parker felt a sting in his nose. He had never thought about it that way before. Yes, his frustration had made him forget the circumstances of these children. They were just like he once was without a family, and now they are a family to each other, and he, in their eyes, was the guardian of that family. Parker slowly began to change his way of thinking. He started listening more, trying to understand what these children had been through. He realized that, although he had initially believed he was just a security guard, he had actually become a part of their lives. From then on, Parker no longer kept his distance. He helped the children fix their broken toys and picked up scattered puzzle pieces for them. He sat with them, listening to their dreams, their fears, and their little hopes. From a strict security guard, Parker became a caretaker, a listener, a true friend to the children. He no longer saw this job as a punishment but as an opportunity to understand the meaning of care and compassion. 1 year later, the children's shelter was chosen as the venue for an important speech by President Trump. Dozens of reporters, government officials, and business people gathered, preparing to witness the speech of the most powerful leader in the United States. Trump entered the large hall of the center, getting ready to approach the podium. Camera flashes flickers continuously, and the murmurs of reporters filled the vast space. But amidst the bustling scene, he suddenly stopped, his eyes fixed on the playground outside through a large window. There, amidst the cheerful laughter of the children, a tall man in a simple security uniform was kneeling down, tying the shoelace of a small girl. He gently comforted her as she spoke, then smiled and lifted another child onto his shoulders, spinning them around, making them laugh gleefully. Trump furrowed his brow, feeling that this man looked familiar. After the speech, he turned to the shelter's manager and asked, "Is that man Stephen Parker?" Trump asked while pointing towards the man playing with the children. The manager glanced outside and replied with deep respect, "Yes, that is Mr. Parker, sir. Oh, you still remember him. He used to be your former bodyguard. To be honest, I was hesitant about hiring him at first. Parker used to be very strict and cold, but over the past year, he has completely changed. Now, he is not just a security guard, he is a caretaker, a teacher, even a father to these children. He loves them as if they were his own." Trump was silent for a moment, his gaze filled with an unusual contemplation. A year ago, Parker had been a completely different person, cold, rigid, and detached. But now, he was the heart of these children's lives, giving them warmth that he once refused to give to anyone. After a moment of silence, Trump nodded and turned to his assistant. "Bring him to see me." Parker entered the private room where Trump was waiting. He felt a little nervous but maintained his usual composure, though his mind raced with questions about the reason for this meeting. Trump looked at him for a long time before finally speaking. "You have changed a lot." Parker nodded, his eyes reflecting both surprise and contemplation. "I never expected to see you again. I've always wanted to say this to you. I sincerely apologize for that day. I acted like a fool. It has always weighed on my mind. Thank God. I have learned a great lesson, sir. These children have taught me more than I ever thought I would learn." Trump recognized the warmth in Parker's eyes as he spoke about the children. Trump smiled, nodding approvingly. "You've done very well. You know, aside from being a skilled bodyguard, I need someone with a warm heart. I need someone like that, someone strong but full of love for children like you on my team. Would you like to return to work at the White House? I believe you can serve even better with all that you've learned." Parker was stunned, his eyes wavering. This was an opportunity he had never dreamed of. He fell silent for a moment. A part of him wanted to accept it, but then the sound of children's laughter echoed from the playground, drifting in through the window. Unconsciously, Parker looked outside the joyful faces that greeted him every day, the small arms that wrapped around him whenever they were sad. He let out a soft sigh and shook his head. "I'm deeply grateful, Mr. President. Honestly, I was almost moved to tears hearing you say that. But I can't go back. You'll have hundreds of bodyguards far better than me. But these children here, they only have me. They've gotten used to having me around. If I leave, they'll be heartbroken. Here, I feel like I have a different purpose, something I've never had before." Trump was silent for a moment, then gave a rare smile. He saw the affection in Parker's eyes and understood that Parker's love for the children outweighed any prestige he could offer. Looking at Parker with respect, he said, "I truly respect your decision. This change is admirable. Someone like you deserves a more important role." Turning to the center's director, Trump added, "I don't want to overstep, but don't you think it would be wonderful if Parker had a higher position at this center? He shouldn't just be a security guard, he should be in charge of the children's activities, helping create an even better environment for them." The director nodded in full agreement. "We've thought about that too, Mr. President. Parker has become an indispensable part of this center. We'd be thrilled if he accepted the role." Parker was surprised but then smiled. "I'd be honored. Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you to the center for giving me this new opportunity." Trump extended his hand, and Parker shook it firmly this time, not as a subordinate receiving orders, but as two people who understood and respected each other. He realized that a second chance didn't always mean returning to the past, but continuing the new path he had found for himself. Parker's story is truly a heartwarming ending. We often forget the core values in life. Strict principles are important, but compassion and kindness are what truly connect us as human beings. Parker was given a remarkable opportunity to make amends. What do you think of this character? Leave a comment below. And don't forget to follow us for the latest stories.